Hi, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. And welcome to a listening session on the draft Tribal Early Childhood Facilities Combined Application Guide. My name is Moshmi Belkangadi. I'm the Director of the Tribal Early Childhood Division in the Office of Early Childhood Development at ACS. And we are so glad you've joined us today to share feedback on the draft resource that was developed collaboratively by ACF's Office of Childcare, Office of Head Start, and Office of Early Childhood Development. This is the second webinar in a series of two. The first was on December 19th, and at that webinar, we shared this new draft resource to support Child Care and Development Fund, tribal lead agencies, and American Indian and Alaska Native Head Start grant recipients to apply to OHS and OCC to jointly use Child Care and Development Fund, CCDF, and Head Start funds to construct or improve early childhood facilities. That webinar provided an in-depth walkthrough on the content of the draft Tribal Early Childhood Facilities Combined Application Guide, and we'll be posting the recording of that session to our ECD website soon. Today's webinar, we won't go into very much detail on the draft application guide since we did provide that walkthrough on December 19th, but we're going to really focus today on hearing from you on any suggestions or feedback that you have on the draft guide or on the current facilities application review and submission processes that could help inform next steps for this work. Next slide. All right, I am joined today by colleagues from the Office of Early Childhood Development, the Office of Childcare, and the Office of Head Start. We will introduce ourselves as we move through the webinar today, but first I would like to introduce and welcome leaders from the Office of Head Start and the Office of Childcare, who will provide some framing remarks for our time together today. Sala Hubin is Deputy Director of the Office of Head Start, and Maggie Quinn is Associate Deputy Director of the Office of Childcare. Thank you for joining us today. Next slide. And I will turn it over to Maggie.
Thank you, Moshmi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maggie Quinn, and as Moshmi said, I'm Associate Deputy Director with the Office of Childcare. We're really excited to take this opportunity to share our progress on the Executive Order's task to develop a streamlined process for tribal early childhood facilities, and more importantly, an opportunity to hear from you on how we can improve this draft application guide. So we know there's a significant need for facilities improvements in early care and education programs across the country, including in tribal communities. And through this effort, we're aiming to reduce the burden for tribal nations so you can more easily braid CCDF and Head Start funding to meet the needs of children in tribal communities through higher quality early learning environments. So we'll also be listing for how we can make improvements in our respective tribal facilities application processes. So as you know, each program has its own statutory and regulatory requirements, and this draft application guide is just our first step in looking for ways to streamline processes across CCDF and Head Start programs. The Office of Childcare also posted a tribal request for information and held 2 tribal consultations late last year to gather feedback for some other ways we can improve the tribal CCDF program. So we are dedicated to supporting tribal nations and really look forward to hearing from you about how we can keep improving these processes and resources and how to improve the final combined early childhood facilities application when it's published later this year. So I'm going to hand it over to my friend Tala.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Maggie. As Moshmi said, my name is Tala Hubin. I am the Deputy Director for the Office of Head Start. I want to thank you all for coming today and thank you in advance for any of the comments or questions that you'll share with us to improve this draft resource. As Maggie pointed out, we know there's a significant need for facilities improvements in our programs nationwide. And I want to acknowledge that many of the solutions in the facility space do actually require more funding, and that requires an act of Congress. But having safe and well-maintained facilities is really critically important to providing quality environments for our children, families, and staff. In tribal communities, we know that facilities are designed to integrate and preserve traditions and culture. With this in mind, I want to reiterate our commitment to streamlining the processes for tribal early childhood facilities, doing all that is within our authority to support high-quality facilities and minimize applicant burden. And with that, I am sending it to Moshmi.
Thank you, Tala, and thank you, Maggie. Next slide, please. So the focus of our webinar today, as I mentioned at the start, is to hear from you on what feedback you have on the draft Combined Tribal Facilities Application Guide, as well as our processes related to tribal facilities projects in general. As Maggie mentioned, we have this draft guide and we're looking at projects that are jointly funded, but this is really just the first step in our overall effort to improve and streamline processes around tribal facilities. So we really appreciate any feedback that you have for us today. Before we begin the listening session portion of the webinar, we'll begin by providing a brief overview of the purpose of the draft Combined Facilities Application Guide and what we're hoping to achieve through this process. Then we will briefly walk through the structure and format of the draft guide for those who aren't as familiar with it. And then we'll aim to spend the bulk of our time together hearing from you and any comments or feedback that you have for us. And really thank you in advance for everything that you will be sharing today. Finally, we'll be sharing some resources and talking about next steps. Next slide. And next slide again. All right. So the purpose of this executive order that was signed by President Biden last year was to really focus on care across the life cycle, including for young children, people with disabilities, and seniors. And this executive order included a number of commitments, and one of those was a commitment to streamline processes for tribal early childhood facilities. So we know this is something that is of high priority to this administration, and we are really taking that charge seriously. Next slide. Over time, we have heard that the processes for applying and receiving approval for facilities projects is long and cumbersome for both Head Start and CCDF programs, and that each program's process is different, which makes it challenging for tribes, especially to propose and implement jointly funded projects because they've had to go through two different offices' application processes in order to do so. Therefore, through this effort, we're working to develop a roadmap to streamline processes and reduce burden for tribes so that they can more easily braid Head Start and CCDF funding to meet the needs of children living in tribal communities through higher quality early learning environments. Next slide. So this effort to align and streamline our processes is critical to us because we know that tribal CCDF and AIA and Head Start facilities projects often touch children served by both Head Start and CCDF programs. The applications that CCDF tribal lead agencies and AIA and Head Start programs submit for facilities projects are similar in many ways, but not identical, which can make it even harder for jointly funded projects. And ACF staff and program offices have similar but not identical review processes. And so through this effort, we're working to balance the need to ensure that federal interest and real property requirements are met while trying to minimize applicant burden. Next slide. Thank you. And while we note that there are many similarities across program requirements and processes, there are also some key differences, which are the result of CCDF and Head Start being inherently very different programs with very different statutory and regulatory requirements that apply to each program. So CCDF is an annual formula-based block grant, while Head Start is a discretionary grant awarded every 5 years. And this can lead to some procedural and logistical differences. In CCDF, tribes set aside the formula funds that are already awarded, while in Head Start, recipients typically request one-time funding for facilities projects, and those are funded based on OHS priorities and availability of funds. In addition, CCDF does not allow for facility purchase, while Head Start does. Also, there are some key statutory and regulatory differences across the programs, which I won't go into here. All of this adds up to an opportunity to streamline and combine requirements balanced with the need to retain and adhere to program-specific requirements. And so we need your input through comments today and in response to the Federal Register notice that's out right now on how we can keep improving our processes, even in the context of these very different programs, to make this process work better for everyone. Next slide. So before we begin the listening session of the webinar, we will provide a brief summary of the content of the draft guide. As I mentioned, we conducted a webinar on December 19th that went into more detail, which we'll be posting on our website soon. And we also encourage you to read the guide to better understand the content, but this is going to be a very high-level summary of the draft guide. So now I will turn it over to Lisa Fergus from the Office of Childcare to share a little bit more about the guide.
Thanks, Moshimi. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Fergus. I'm a Senior Tribal Program Specialist with the Office of Childcare. And I just want to share with you the 5 sections and an overview of those sections of the guide. The first section, and next slide,
Can you go to the next
please.
slide, please? Yeah.
Okay. So the first section is the background, which discusses why OCC and OHS developed this guide. The second is the overview, which discusses the purpose as well as the limitations of the guide. The purpose is to streamline the process for tribal CCDF lead agencies and AIAN Head Start programs by submitting joint applications to use both CCDF as well as Head Start funds to either purchase, build, or renovate early care and education facilities in tribal communities. The third section is the combined application process, which includes the steps to develop, submit, as well as review the application. The fourth section is the applications requirement, which it is the longest section, which includes 3 subsections that detail information for the requirements related to narratives, cost estimates, as well as supporting documentation. And then the last is the appendices and resources, which provides additional information, key terms and definitions, as well as additional requirements for those who are proposing to purchase modular units. Next slide, please. So the combined application process section outlines at a very high level the process for developing and submitting the combined application to ACF. This also provides some tips and reminders to support the development and the submission of the combined application. The first step in the process is for the CCDF tribal lead agencies, as well as for the AIAN Head Start programs, to initiate a planning and pre-consultation with OCC and OHS. This provides an opportunity to discuss the proposed facilities and any activities associated with both your regional program specialist and grant management specialist before you delve too far into the planning process. So this pre-consultation also provides an opportunity to discuss the feasibility, the timeline for the project, if there are any implications for program enrollment, health and safety, as well as the need for the project. It also will have the consideration of the funding sources that will pay both for the project planning as well as the completion of the project. We would like to note that Head Start and CCDF funds can be used for reasonable and necessary cost and fees related to the planning of the facilities. More specifically, Head Start recipients may submit a written request for one-time funds for planning cost or use available grant funds, whereas CCDF tribal lead agencies may use your regular CCDF allotment for planning, but these funds must first be set aside. So after the planning and pre-consultation phase, this section of the guide briefly highlights the application development, expectations for submitting real property standard forms, as also known as the SF 429 or the SF forms, and the application submission and review process. I'd also like to note that the submission and review process are described only briefly in this guide because ACF is still working through those processes. And we look forward to sharing more about that in the coming months. So in the next section of the webinar and also during the listening session, we'd love to hear your feedback on what a helpful process would look like. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Todd. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Todd Triangle. I am the Regional Program Manager for the Office of Head Start's Region 11. And in Region 11, we support all of our tribal Head Start and early Head Start programs around the country. So today, I get the pleasure of really jumping into the guide itself and really walking through some of those applications as they're currently outlined within that draft guide. So we can jump to the next slide. Thank you so much. And so here, folks, we'll see that currently we've broken up that draft guide and the application requirements into 3 separate sections. So the first of those sections is the project narrative. The second section would be the cost estimates. And then the third section, which is the supporting documents. So the requirements in each of the 3 sections do align with the current CCDF program instruction. And for folks interested in viewing that, the specific program instruction is CCDF-ACF-PI-2023-01. And of course, they also align with the Head Start program performance standards, of course, most of which are going to be found in section 1303.44A1 of the Head Start program performance standards. So I also want to make sure that we note that this is not intended to communicate any new requirements that have been established, but really just to reflect on how, if you did want to propose a project that would be funded by both streams, those requirements could be fit together into one application. Another thing to note is that for our CCDF recipients on the line, this guidance does apply to those that are directly funded from CCDF and those that have their CCDF funds consolidated into a Public Law 102477 plan. So if you have your CCDF funds as a part of a 477 plan, this would apply to you as well. So we can jump over into the next slide. Thank you. And on this slide here, we're going to jump a little bit more into those 3 sections of the guide. So as Moshmi has stated, we're not intending to go into deep detail here, but really we still wanted to provide a snapshot of what is required within each of those 3 sections of the application. In accordance, of course, with the draft guide currently. So I'm going to start first. On the left here, we do see the project narrative section. And your project narrative, of course, is that written section of the application where you're really proposing what you're planning to do to us, for us. And that section should include things like, justifying the need for the facility, the impact that the facility is going to have on your enrollment and your service provisions, information about where the facility is being proposed and where the location will be. It should include a description of the proposed facility, including how it will support the health, safety, and child development, any collaboration or coordination efforts in support of the proposed project, and a detailed project timeline and plans for oversight of the project. So again, that's the written section of the application. Jumping over into the next column that's in green here for the cost estimates. We know that we're looking for information on how about the financing of the project and associated costs, and of course a cost comparison. And then finally, we're looking at over into the third column at supporting documentation. So this here outlines a number of supporting documents which you can read, and on this slide and in the draft application guide, really align with your narrative and of course the section 2, the cost estimates. So I'm looking at this slide here too. We did want to pause and kind of get any feedback from folks on the 3 sections and what currently within the draft guide is being required. So I think too, as folks kind of give thought to that.
Why don't we move to the next? Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, Moshmi, then I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we move to the next slide? So now we're going to move into the listening session portion. And the first thing that we do want to hear from you is your feedback on the draft guide that Todd just reviewed. We would welcome you to come off mute or to share any feedback or questions in the chat. And please, when you provide a remark, please state your name, your tribe, and your role, and that will be very helpful to us. So next slide. Okay, so first, as Todd mentioned, we'd love to hear your feedback on the current draft of the combined application guide. So specifically, do you have feedback on the structure, for example, the 3 sections and having the supporting documents as a separate section? Are there parts of the guide or current application requirements that don't make sense or feel duplicative? Is there anything not in the guide that seems like it would be helpful, or do you have suggestions for streamlining further? Is there anything that would not be helpful or might make processes worse? And then, are we really addressing the greatest areas of misalignment between the current Head Start and CCDF processes? Are we adequately addressing those? So I'll just open it up here to any comments that folks might have. Again, either come off mute and speak up or provide those within the chat.
Hi, my name is Hyun Nam. I had a quick question about the cost allocation requirements. So if the funding is coming from Office of Childcare and another set of funding coming from OHS, and childcare funding is not able to be used for purchasing a property. So if a purchase is needed and the facility will be used for, OCC program and OHS program, will the cost allocation requirements, meaning like, a 20%, like 40% is being used for Head Start and 60% for OCC. Obviously, if OCC funds cannot be used for purchase, I mean, it's impossible to meet that cost allocation requirement by funding 60% with one funds and 40% with the other. So will there be some kind of exception or some kind of flexibility that will allow for funds to be like Head Start funds to be used for the entire project, potentially even the purchase, even though there will be allocated portion that would not be used for Head Start program?
No, thank you for that question. I think it's a wonderful question, and I think something that we need to think through. So that's really helpful to us as we continue with this process of refining the guide in order to be able to provide some clear guidance about how cost allocation can be done to accurately reflect the way the project is being funded overall. As you said, given that Head Start funds can be used for purchase and CCDF cannot, and you also have to think about other aspects of the way the facility is being renovated or constructed. So thank you for that. And I'll ask if Todd or Lisa, if you guys have anything else you might want to add at this point.
Thanks, Moshmi. So this is Todd with the Office of Head Start. So in a scenario like the one that was just presented, I know one important aspect of any new facility too is the ongoing operation costs. So while in that scenario, CCDF funds may not be going toward the purchase, they may be potentially cost allocated when we talk about the ongoing operation costs, right? Like the utilities to operate that facility. So that's probably one area where I would encourage our grant recipients or cost to really give thought to in terms of like the ongoing cost and how we're going to cost allocate between those two programs if they're sharing that space. So that's just one thing I would encourage you to give thought to.
Right, and
I would
have an opportunity to add to that, with the CCDF funds, if the Head Start funds were used to purchase the building, another part of that scenario is that the CCDF funds could possibly be used to help to renovate or to do, a portion of that major renovation, or as Todd said, help to provide some ongoing cost for the operational cost. So this certainly can help to provide some feedback on how to best cost allocate and to provide more accurate information for you.
Thank you. And definitely, as you look at providing written feedback in response to the Federal Register notice, we'd love to hear feedback specifically on that cost estimate section, and if there are things that are confusing about that, or if additional guidance or information might be helpful for potential applicants. All right, I see a comment from Susan Smith. Susan, would you like to say a little bit more about that?
Yes, we're planning on expanding our existing site and adding 2 more early Head Start classrooms and an infant toddler center. And I was wondering if these funds would be allowed for this, to do that.
So just to clarify, that this isn't additional funding that's being offered through this process. This is really about using either existing CCDF funds that have been set aside or requesting from the Office of Head Start for additional funds. But certainly that's the intention of this guide, is to allow for projects just like what you're talking about, where the project is really benefiting children who are served by both programs. So really what you're talking about, I think, is an ideal candidate for this type of an effort. And again, I'll ask Todd or Lisa if they have anything else they would like to add.
I think I don't have anything else to add. I think you summarized that up well. Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I just agree with motion made that this would be an opportunity or an example of potentially this partnership or a combined application.
Thank you.
Other comments on the draft guide itself? Is there anything that you'd like us to take another look at, or you would recommend for the next draft, or, really how could we go further to make this draft guide work for you? All right, so we also, knowing that this guide is intended to streamline the process for tribes to use both Head Start and CCDF funds and avoid applying separately to both the Office of Head Start and the Office of Childcare, that you'd really be submitting one application that would be reviewed and approved by both offices in a coordinated way. We're wondering if you might have any thoughts or recommendations about the process for submitting, reviewing, and approving these joint applications, and what might be helpful for us to consider as we refine and develop this process over the coming months. All right, well, we hopefully will hear from some of you in response to the opportunity for written comments on the Federal Register notice about how this facility's application review and approval process might work for you with a single application for these combined projects. We definitely would love to hear any suggestions or thoughts you have as we work through some of the nuances of what it would look like for a tribe to submit just one application to both offices in a coordinated way. All right. So our next set of questions really are around what are the current barriers to building a facility that would be jointly funded by Head Start and CCDF. So is it some aspect of the applications themselves? Is it some aspect of the submission process, the review and approval processes? If anyone on the line has done these kind of projects, what were some of the challenges? And if you have considered doing one of these projects and not done it, what stopped you? Why did it seemed like that wasn't going to be the approach that you wanted to take as a tribe. And any other feedback that you might have about barriers, we'd love to hear today.
This is Julie from Umatilla Tribe.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, I was just wondering on this, as far as like Head Start and CCDF, does that make a difference or anything as far as like funding? Like if you're we're not currently 477, but some tribes might be. Is there a difference on that if there was a 477, or is it easier due to the you know, there's different federal fundings?
So I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but this, it is possible to do a facility that's jointly funded by both programs, whether you're a direct funded CCDF program or a 477 program, a program that has their CCDF program integrated into their 477 plan. So the process we're proposing would apply to both types of CCDF programs. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
So I'm especially curious if there's anybody who has thought about doing a project that's jointly funded. I know in some communities, you know, you may have a relatively small community and it's a lot of time and investment to develop one facility, but because it has been challenging to use both funding streams, you know, it may be supported by just one program or the other, or the programs may not coordinate at all, resulting in facilities that don't really work for the entire community. So we'd love to specifically hear from those who might have considered doing this type of work, but haven't in the past, you know, kind of what stopped you and what were the barriers that you perceived to doing that type of work.
This is Julie again from Umatilla Tribe. We have, and we're working towards that right now currently. I mean, our funding is still separate, but I mean, we're trying to use the building as a facility, you know, a joint facility. And that's what we're kind of trying to work towards. And I think it's space right now, what we're dealing with, and that's what, you know, some of the barriers are that, you know, and then some of the funding, I guess we got to kind of get through the CCDF funding, and we do have funding for construction right now. So we've been trying to work through that process right now. And we don't really, I mean, we're trying to look at a manufactured, but we don't really want to do a manufactured. We kind of want to do a, you know, building that's going to be permanent, but not sure of the cost or if there's any other funding, you know, or how Head Start funding, I guess, would work. We know how CCDF work, but the Head Start funding, if there's any construction type of funding or within that, or how does that work?
So Todd, do you want to answer the question about how Head Start construction funding works?
Sure, and thank you for your question, Julie. So regarding the Office of Head Start, you know, we currently do not receive an appropriation that is specifically targeted for facilities from Congress. However, we are able to, from time to time, support facility projects, and the means by which we do that typically may come from funds that were not spent in the previous year. But for the most part, what we want to make sure we're doing is we're providing support to programs so that they can generate and submit an application to us that we can consider. And then at that point is typically when we go and we try to find the funding to support that. So I'm glad that each year we're normally able to support a few projects. Depends, of course, on the number of applications that we get in. But certainly, I think if that's something that you're interested in, we know that commercial real estate can be a very tough process. So if you want to have some conversations around that, we would love to kind of sit down and get an idea, one of what it is you're looking for, the ideas that you have. And that way we can help you kind of by laying out what's going to be required for you to submit in order to be considered to receive some funding specific to that facility. I think another thing we've seen some programs do as well is, you know, we know that the planning is quite cumbersome for a commercial real estate project. You know, doing things like working with architects, doing things like phase 1 environmental site assessments. Those things can be cumbersome as well as costly. And so for programs that may also have excess funding that they have the ability to modify, that's another area where you can potentially look to see if it might be able to support that and kind of help you with getting through some of that planning process. So definitely please do reach out so we can kind of begin some conversations around a facility project for you.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I definitely encourage you, Julie, to reach out to both your childcare and your Head Start regional program specialists, and they can talk with you in a coordinated way around this. And we might also be able to look at your project as a opportunity to kind of pilot our draft process here. So that might be also something to talk with us about.
Okay, because also I know that we have some TA because we are one of the tribes that got the telly, so that's where we're trying to go with the
Yeah.
early learning project. So is that kind of a coordinated effort too with the telly, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we can talk with you all about the telly and can be a big part of your overall telly project. I think that's exactly the kind of thing that the telly is designed to support by supporting collaboration across Head Start and childcare. So we'd be really excited to work with you on that too. So if you want to connect with Eva about that too, then that would be wonderful.
Okay, yeah, we talk with Eva, so that's good. Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
I think somebody had a question in chat. Says, can Head Start be integrated into 477?
No, thank you. I did not see that. Todd, do you want to respond to that question?
Sure, I'd be happy to respond to that. So currently Head Start is not one of the programs within ACF that's eligible to be rolled into a 477 plan. So all of our current Head Start and early Head Start programs are direct funded.
So I see a question, would the facility application request have to include a Head Start program? We don't currently have a program. So for this combined application process, yes, it would have to include both a childcare and a Head Start program. But if you have a CCDF program, you can work directly with the Office of Childcare on submitting an application using their process. For now, the process for the Office of Childcare is the way it's outlined in the program instruction that Todd mentioned earlier. And I don't know, Lisa, if you want to say anything more about that.
Yes, so as Moshmi had indicated, the process has not changed. In order to submit an application, to set aside funding for an application, this joint application is for those programs that do have Head Start and childcare funds and are looking for a way to combine the funds in order to build a facility, purchase, look to see whatever might be best meet the needs of your tribal community. So if you are looking at solely doing a CCDF funded construction project, it would still follow the same process of the same application, the same review. And we would encourage you to work closely with your regional program specialist, or you can ask any other questions related to that as well.
All right, why don't we move to the next slide? Thank you. So here we'd like to hear about the current processes used by each office. So kind of independent of projects that might be jointly funded. We'd love to hear any thoughts or feedback that you have for us on, what are the aspects of the processes either for Head Start or CCF that are most challenging, what we could do better to make it work from the federal level, what changes might have the greatest impact on improving the application and approval process to use either CCDF or Head Start funds for facilities projects. And that question is really because we want to use this opportunity to hear from you about the overall processes and not just this combined application guide, and any feedback that you have could really be instructive for the office's regular processes or this joint process specifically. So any thoughts about current processes used by either the Office of Head Start or the Office of Childcare to receive, review, and approve submissions for construction major renovation projects? So I see a question in the chat asking what is considered major renovation. Lisa, would you like to answer that? And then I'll turn it over to Todd.
Julie, in response to your question about major renovation, that is any that change the scope of the current facility or the function, any movement of load-bearing walls, any extensions of the facility or any expansions, or changing the purpose or function of a specific room of that existing facility. So the definition is consistent, remains the same as it currently is within the PI.
And then I know Head Start has a different definition of major renovation.
Yes, thank you, Moshmi, and thank you, Lisa. For the Office of Head Start, normally that's defined as anything where the combined renovating cost is in excess of $250,000.
So that's an area where obviously we have a little bit of difference across the offices, which is something that we're working through and aren't able to address to this specific draft guide and process, but are aware of. But there is a proposed definition in the guide of what would be considered major renovation for the purpose of these type of jointly funded projects. So when you do review the guide, you can take a look at what's proposed there. So I see a question, could we get a brief overview of the OCC application process? So I will ask Lisa to provide that.
Hi, and thank you for your question. So for the application process for OCC is first, funding must be set aside in the year that it is awarded or appropriated. So for example, any funds that are awarded in fiscal year 24 would need to be set aside by July 1st. And that can be a simple step and process of submitting a request of the amount of funding that is needed or intended to be used for a construction project, and signed by your tribal leader, as well as just indicating the information related to your tribal lead agency. For the actual construction process and application review, there is an 18-item checklist that is available through our program instruction, which you can link to that as well through this application, which must be completed and then submitted to your regional office. An application cannot be approved until it is complete. So there really is no specific time frame of the actual review or submission of the application. We just ask that you submit that expeditiously, but also you can use a portion of your set aside funds to use for planning cost in order to help you to prepare your application, to also to determine the feasibility of if the project is within the scope of the needs of the community or of your tribal community. And then at that time, the review and approval goes through a process within our regional as well as our central office. If you are a 477 tribe, there is kind of an added layer to that of the approval goes to the BIA, and then in turn, they will also issue an approval letter. So the process is not different for direct funded. It only has that additional layer for those who are have consolidated under 477. What does really kind of determine the project is the liquidation timeframe of when those funds are awarded. So we really have heard the challenges that it is challenging to both plan as well as begin construction on a project within that 3-year liquidation timeframe. So in some instances, they are multi-year, funded projects. So meaning that you may have to set aside fiscal year 24, possibly fiscal year 25. So again, if you can initially talk to your regional program specialist to let them know of your interest or intent to construct or whatever your facilities needs are. And then they can work with you as well as with TA to help you to develop a plan and provide those resources for you as well.
Thank you, Lisa. And I did put a link to the program instruction that Lisa mentioned that goes into a lot more detail about the process and includes that checklist of what needs to be submitted and all of that.
Thanks, Moshimi, for including that.
Any thoughts on the current processes used by Office of Head Start or Office of Child Care for facilities projects? All right, why don't we move to the next slide? So we're interested in hearing from you about, for this combined facilities application guide, what technical assistance supports would be helpful to submit an application for combined facilities projects. So are there specific information that would be helpful, examples, additional support, coaching, training? You know, are there specific things that you feel would be helpful, specific aspects of the application, for example, how to conduct environmental assessments, how to work with an architect, you know, things like that. Any thoughts about technical assistance that would be helpful in a combined application process? Is there anything you'd like to share about what kinds of TA are currently helpful to you for facilities projects, or in general, what kind of additional TA might be helpful or supportive? So we have a question, will the TA be provided from CCDF or OHS, or will there be a lead person? So certainly with this combined application process, our intent is to have a coordinated technical assistance approach. And we're talking together across the OAK program offices now about what TA for this would look like. But we certainly expect that there will be just one point of contact for technical assistance for these kinds of projects.
And really quickly, Moshmi, this is Todd. I also just, again, thank you for your question, Jenny. One thing I too want to circle back to is something that you kind of commented on not too long ago, Moshmi, in terms of bringing both program offices together. So for those recipients that are considering this, please do not hesitate to reach out to your team from OHS and your team from CCDF so that we can all, like Moshmi said, all come together and have a discussion around this project and what you're thinking at a time. That's really what we're hoping to do with this. I think the sooner we do that, when you're considering that, you know, the better chance we have to all be moving in the same direction. So please don't hesitate to reach out to CCDF and to OHS and say, hey, I'd like to talk about a joint facility. Can we talk about a day and time when everybody can come together and jump on a call and hear what we're thinking? And at that point, begin our planning together.
Thanks, Todd. So I see a question about, can the project be design build? I'm not sure I understand the question. Jenny, would you be able to come off mute and say more?
This is Jenny. So I believe design build would be, you're kind of just designing it as you're building, so to speak.
I don't know, Todd or Lisa, are you all familiar with this and have thoughts on this?
So this is Todd. I'll jump in first. You know, normally for us to be able to award funds, we have to have, as the application kind of outlined, certain things in place, right? We have to have architectural drawings and schematics for that facility plan. We have to have proposals from a contractor in place specific to that design. So we've not done any where we kind of, because I'm assuming that I don't know if the funding would be on a rolling basis. We've not done it before like that. So I wouldn't say that it couldn't be, but it's not, I don't think the way we've done it in the past. Lisa, I don't know if you're familiar, if you had, you guys have maybe had projects that stretched out over time.
Actually, in order to approve the application, it would be very similar to the same requirements of Head Start, that we would have to have those specifications, all of the assurances, anything that's related to the overall build and completion of the facility would need to be in that initial application in order for it to be approved. However, there are opportunities to submit or to amend different pieces of an approved application. So we understand that sometimes a project may come in over budget, or maybe you are looking at expanding what your current, what your initial plans were or something. So as far as like building it as you proceed, you would have to actually have whatever your overall plans are to be included with that initial application. But we would be very interested in hearing more about this because, in order to try to have additional flexibility with this or in considerations for this joint application, we would like to hear more so that could be considered.
And real quick too, Jenny, I see your other question in the chat regarding how the project will be cost allocated between CCDF and OHS. And so to respond to that really quickly too, I think certainly it's going to depend on your proposal and what you have in mind for that project. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So really cost allocation comes down to what do we feel is appropriate for one funding source to pay for it and versus another funding source. And some examples of how that could be determined, not how it has to be determined, but let's hypothetically say I want a project and I want 8 classrooms in that facility, right? I'm going to have 4 Head Start classrooms and 4 CCDF classrooms. and then I want administrative space. So one thing that you could do is you could use the square footage that is going to be utilized by each program office as a way to help you with cost allocation, right? So the square footage for constructing the Head Start portion versus the childcare portion, including the administrative offices and then shared space. So there are multiple ways and methodologies that you can cost allocate. That's just one example, but it really comes down to the proposal. So I think one thing that we can do is probably, if you have something in mind, we can begin those discussions, and maybe that's something we can help you out figuring out as we learn more about what it is you have in mind.
Thank you.
So I see another question. If a program is wanting to submit an application and the tribe has both Head Start funding and CCDF funding and operates in separate facilities, can an application be submitted for a new facility for just the Head Start program? I think if the facility is just for the Head Start program, then you would use the Office of Head Start process, the current process, for submitting this type of project. But I definitely would encourage you to talk with your program specialist to see, get a little bit more information about what you're thinking about and see if what makes the most sense. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Todd.
No, great answer. If the facility is just for use for Head Start, then I definitely encourage you to reach out to program specialists, grant specialists, and begin a conversation about what it is you're looking for.
All right, let's move to the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we've talked about various aspects of the facilities project and the guide and all that, but definitely we just want to open it up for any general feedback that you have for us on current facilities processes to submit an application for either program. What's working well, what's challenging, how could we make things work better for you, what additional supports would be helpful. We'd love to just hear any thoughts that you might have about your experiences submitting applications for either program. I see a comment. They are both challenging. Thank you. Any specific feedback you might have, Jenny, about what's challenging about the processes?
This is Jenny. I would like to see an example. I don't need to know either program or anything like that, but just an example. And that would be for both CCDF and for Head Start. That's always helpful for me.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Learner.
Hi, Jenny, and thank you for that. So I'll say last year we got a couple of really good ones. So certainly out of respect to that grant recipient, I can definitely ask if maybe we can kind of share what they submitted in response to that 1303. So let me check in with that tribe. And if they're good with that, I'm absolutely happy to kind of share that with you And that way you'll kind of get a better idea of what resulted in success, right? What produced an award. Of course, we know, at least with the Head Start side, it's not guaranteed even with that, but we are, like I said before, we're glad that we are able to support several typically each year, depending on how many we get. So I'll follow up with you.
And I believe Office of Child Care is also working on making a sample application to share. I don't know if anyone from OCC would like to say anything about that.
Yes, so, and that is correct, motion made, that we can work with our TA to help to maybe find an application to share that might meet the needs, because again, we would like to be able to ensure that we're sharing one that would be most fit maybe what project that you have in mind. The other piece is in some of the training materials from the CCDF Tribal TA Center. They currently do actually use snippets of applications in those different items within the checklist to help to share some sample responses. But what I would also encourage you to do is what we have heard from tribal lead agencies and administrators is probably also the best form of a resource or experience is just to actually connect with another tribal program as well, to be able to go on site to see their facility so you can hear maybe what their challenges were, what their successes were, maybe look at different designs or different elements that might be needed for you for, like, if you're serving different age groups, if there are certain state licensing requirements or other considerations, or if you're looking at additional funding. So I think that that would also be a great resource, not only the application that's being provided or serving as like an example, but you know, coordinating a trip locally if you can, if you have some other facilities in there, or even what we saw too during the pandemic is they were open to some virtual visits. So I think that there is that opportunity if you are able to go on site or to even maybe meet with someone virtually.
So this is Jenny again. So we did have the opportunity to go see Ethan's facility up there in Anchorage. Beautiful. But I think a part of this too is just being able to, you know, match up with somebody who administers Head Start, early Head Start and childcare. Like one program administers that, because you might have tribes who administer Head Start, but a different department manages CCDF or something like that. Or you might be, let me see, just for lack of an example here, like a community action agency, or maybe you're some other, maybe you're a consortium or something like that. But being able to, I guess, meet with somebody who is somewhat similar to our situation, kind of a thing. I don't know if you're understanding me, but I think would be helpful for me. I mean, I can go see someone else's nice, I seen Ethan's beautiful facility, but I don't know that I necessarily got the information that is going to help me as far as like preparing an application, so to speak. Without maybe seeing an example, and because I think an example can really help you in making your own application. I'm not saying we're going to plagiarize his or anything like that, but to spark some ideas and content for the direction that we want to go without trying to shoot in the dark. Like, what do you guys want to see, so to speak?
So
That's
Jenny,
really helpful feedback.
sorry, Moshmi, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was helpful, really helpful feedback. And I think peer exchange and connection is, I think, a really important part of this work.
I absolutely agree. And that's kind of what I was hearing too. And what I was getting at is like, Jenny, maybe what I can do is at least to kind of begin your thought process maybe I can reach out to a couple of directors that I've worked with that have successfully submitted applications and either built a facility or in the process of building a facility. And maybe would you be open to maybe scheduling a joint call with kind of them? That way you can ask direct questions to them of what that experience was like, what their thought process was. And of course, well, Office of Head Start would be there as well, at least just to begin some initial discussions, and hopefully maybe that will kind of give you some ideas of what's going to be required and what the possibilities are there with the facility. So if you think that can help, I'm happy to do that as well.
Awesome, thank you.
And in the spirit of partnership and the coordination of this joint facilities guide, Office of Childcare will certainly, provide the same. And if that could be a coordinated effort between Head Start and childcare to look at both elements of those applications, or maybe some of the other considerations that were, part of both.
Thank you, Todd and Lisa. I thought I saw a raised hand, but it went away pretty quickly. I don't think I saw the name. Was there someone else who wanted to? Oh, I see. Lacey Lewis. Would you like to say something?
Hi, yeah, I'll just jump in for a quick second because I'm kind of listening in. I work for South Puget Intertribal Planning Agency in Washington State, and we do work with consortium tribes. So in experience, and I come from Head Start, so I have lots of experience with facilities projects, but it seems like in our role at SPIPA with what we're approving and so far is like Chehalis tribe, Nisqually tribe, they both have done facilities projects. We've kind of been a part of that with some of the funding sources. We also have tribal childcare funds. It seems like they go ahead and do the work with facilities, projects, improvements or additions, and then they submit their cost to us after the fact. So we kind of act as like a reimbursement for some of those costs. But I think what would kind of be nice is if we were a part of the conversations that were at the planning phase of it all, and then like the application process as well, because sometimes we have these funds and we want to make sure that they're dispersed evenly, and then we want to make sure that we're following the rules of Office of Head Start and CCDF with approving those funds. But it seems like our agency is mostly doing reimbursement, but we do have funds that are out there for facilities projects.
Thank you, Lacey. And I think this really raises an interesting point about, for many, both Head Start and childcare, there are many cases where the program is administered through a consortium. And so if there is a misalignment between whether the Head Start program is in a consortium and the childcare program is in a consortium, that it might be particularly complex to do projects that are jointly funded. Like in your case where your childcare program is through a consortium, but then the individual tribes have Head Start grants.
Right, and it seems like, I formerly worked at Nisqually. It seems like there were 2 grant applications that were separate for tribal childcare services, one through Head Start, one through tribal childcare, but it didn't occur to me that they were aware that these could be merged. So, this is helpful with information that I could share out to, the program managers about that, not now this is allowable because some people, are operating off of state standards, and some people are operating off of, the performance standards or, ACF. So thank you.
Thanks. Any other general feedback that folks have? All right, why don't we move to the next slide? So before we wrap up, we just wanted to ask if you have any feedback about how we've engaged with you on this new draft process. Do you feel like you've been adequately engaged to actively participate? Do you understand the terms that we're using? I don't know, like, were you able to review the draft guide ahead of time or receive sufficient notice about these webinars? Was the information well publicized? Any thoughts about how we've engaged with you all would be really helpful.
This is Jenny. I just want to say that I'm happy you folks are going in this direction, doing one facilities application process. I think that's it'll be very helpful, and I just want to say I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jenny.
Hi, you said that the draft guide would be posted soon for reference because I wasn't able to attend that previous webinar. So would I be able to access that?
Yes, I'm going to put the website in the chat. Where you'll be able to access the information. So this website currently has a copy of the guide itself for review, and we will also be posting the webinar on that page, hopefully very soon. It also links to the Federal Register notice itself, which you may be interested in reviewing. All right, why don't we move to the next slide? So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and questions today. I think a lot of your comments will be really helpful to us as we continue to refine this guide and think about our process and our technical assistance around these projects. So as I said before, a Federal Register notice was published soliciting public comments and feedback on the draft Tribal Early Childhood Facilities Combined Application Guide. And so you can request a copy of the draft guide and submit your comments to the email address here. As I mentioned, it's also posted on the website that I put in the chat. And the comment period is currently open until January 29th. It was a 60-day comment period. So we look forward to receiving your written feedback in addition to what you were able to share today. We really take this, opportunity to receive feedback from you really seriously and really want to incorporate it into the work that we're doing. So really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and also submit your written comments. Next slide. So this is just showing the website that I put in the chat that you'll see here has some of the key resources around this project. And we'll be continuing to update this site as we have more information. And again, we'll be posting the webinar very soon. Next slide. I wanted to share a little bit about our next steps for this process. So we're here today on January 11th on this listening session. And as I mentioned, the 60-day public comment period will close on January 29th, and we ask you to please submit your comments and suggestions and recommendations. Over the course of the winter, ACF will be revising the draft guide based on the comments that we receive. We will also be finalizing the submission review and approval process internally here at ACF across Office of Child Care and Office of Head Start, and how we're going to be coordinating these processes to support you. We'll also be developing different technical assistance resources and supports that will accompany this process. And then in the spring, we will be publishing a revised application guide. There will be another comment period of 30 days. There will be a Federal Register notice announcing this. And then following the publication of that Federal Register notice and incorporation of any comments that we receive, we will be seeking approval from the Office of Management and Budget for this guide. And then our goal is to publish the final application guide and the accompanying TA resources in the summer of this year. So there will still be lots of opportunity to weigh in, provide feedback, and answer any questions that you may have. And please reach out to folks within both offices with any thoughts that you might have as well. And I see Todd came on camera. So was there something you wanted to add? No, okay. All right. And I also wanted to note that the CCDF tribal request for information just closed its comment period on January 2nd, and just want to thank those of you who may have responded to that. I know there was some requests about thoughts around facilities processes that was part of that as well. So thank you for anything you might have shared as part of that process. And then finally, in November, the Office of Head Start published a notice of proposed rulemaking in the Federal Register on supporting the Head Start workforce and consistent quality programming. We really encourage you to read the full notice of proposed rulemaking, and the comment period for that is open until January 19th. And with that, again, thank you so much. And now I would like to turn it over to Colleen Rathgeb, who's our Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for Early Childhood Development, to provide some closing remarks. And if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. And Colleen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Moshmi, and Lisa and Todd and the whole team here. Thanks so much. I really want to thank everyone that spent your valuable time with us, especially in the light of the number of requests that we know many leaders and members of tribal nations are currently receiving to share your feedback and thoughts with us. So we really appreciate the partnership with tribal nations and really are committed to supporting tribes in their early childhood efforts. We embarked on this effort, on this process of creating a combined tribal facility guide, really trying to cut some of the red tape and to be a better nation-to-nation partner with tribes, and really to be able to see some of the potential of early childhood centers where the tribes could be looking across funding streams and seeing how they can build early childhood centers where your children can experience your culture, your language, and where multi-generational families really would feel welcome, again, like across the particular programs. And we at ACF, particularly within the Office of Early Childhood Development with Head Start and Office of Child Care, want to ensure early childhood centers are meeting the needs of children across Indian country. So in saying that, I do want to acknowledge that we know we aren't always, we're not all the way there yet. Like we with OHS, OCC, and Office of Early childhood development really do depend on the feedback that you're giving us today and in these other venues that Moshmi just mentioned. On that feedback that we receive from tribal leaders and tribal program leaders and administrators, which is why we go through this public comment process to finalize it before we finalize this, what hopefully we think can be a useful tool. But we really want to know from you more of what we can do to simplify and streamline these processes and requirements. And like we were talking about, what other supports from the program offices like Todd and Lisa were talking about, or also the TA that we can provide as you continue to develop and improve facilities that support tribal children growing and learning in safe, healthy, and culturally rich environments. So I want to thank you for the feedback through the public comment process, and also for being here today and sharing your perspectives and input.
All right, thank you, Colleen. Thanks again to all of you for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we look forward to receiving your written comments as well. Thank you for taking the time. Bye.